I think we've had a 5-minute break that lasted about 16 minutes.
What I tell you, I told you.
Robbie called it. All right, let's introduce our next speaker. He spoke for us for our anniversary this year. One of my favorite speakers on all the planet, besides the other two that are speaking here tonight. What can I say? Please, Chris S. from Connecticut. Let's welcome him. If we can get in the house there. There we go.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris, and I am an alcoholic. It's really, really great to be here. Ron and team, thank you so much for putting this together. I can't think of a better place to be on New Year's Eve. I don't know about anybody else, but I had a couple of bad New Year's Eves. There was just a couple of times where I overshot the mark a little bit. I'll tell you about one of them. I drunk out of my mind. I got a carload of people, and I've almost driven over a cliff, and they got me up against the car, and they're changing the tires because I went over a curb. And I jumped back in the car and tried to back up while they're changing the tire. They lumped me up good. That was a bad one. But I've had some really, really bad New Year's. Robbie, powerful talk. I so appreciated that talk. Not only is, let me put it this way. You know what kills alcoholics more than anything else when they get into Alcoholics Anonymous? Lack of enthusiasm. And what we witnessed tonight was we witnessed a serious dose, an uncut dose of enthusiasm. And I got to tell you, if you could bottle that enthusiasm, you'd knock crack right off the market. You know what I mean? I really needed that. Alcoholism. I drank for 20 years. It was a mess over any considerable period of time. It always gets worse. It never gets better. The one constant was every single year I had to put more ounces of alcohol into my body every day than I did the year before, because it's just progressive. And if you do that over any considerable period of time, there's going to be consequences. There's going to be health, relationship, legal, all kinds of consequences. And one of the things, alcoholism, they call it a rapacious creditor, and it really is. And there's some aspects to alcoholism that are devastating. One of the characteristics of alcoholism is alcoholism does not allow you the dignity of an accurate self-appraisal when you're really suffering from it. So, you are in way more trouble than you think you are at any given time. The only way to get to a point where you're starting to get the picture is after step work. Step work is designed to bring us back to sanity and to expose us to a loving God that has just been waiting for us to come to this whole time. And one of the challenges as a sponsor, one of the challenges, helping to get through to the newcomer, is to in a loving way convince them how much trouble they're in. Robbie said, my case is different. We all think our case is different. I thought my case was different. I didn't think that I wasn't as bad as you. I thought I was 10 times worse than you, so this wouldn't work for me. I had the reverse problem with thinking my case was different. And then one day I heard this guy, my name is Danny, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. And he started talking about living in a box in the park and giving blood. Finally I said, oh my God, somebody actually worse than me. I'm in, because I got sober in a very wealthy area. There'd be a brain surgeon, a doctor, a lawyer, a money manager, and Chris, like driving a $100 car, living at mom's, and that's the groups that I got sober at. But But for some crazy reason, you know, why I think I was successful is I just never stopped coming. I never stopped paying attention. I never stopped working with a sponsor, and I never stopped trying to be of help, you know, where I could. And that really got me to a point where, you know, I started to heal. There's 3 legacies in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's unity, recovery, and service. I was exposed to unity and I was exposed to service way before I was exposed to recovery. Now, don't get me wrong. I was going to 12 and 12 meetings. You know, the steps were up on the wall. There was a lot of talk about the steps. But the steps are not meant to be learned. You know, Robbie was talking about this. These steps must be experienced. I was the type of person who just give me all the books. You know, give me Not God and give me all the books, especially the non-conference approved. You know, the LSD books. You know, give me all that stuff, and because I want to learn this stuff. And then I'll be good. But I got to tell you, knowing all of this stuff is the booby prize. When you actually take these steps, something happens. And so I'm bopping around Alcoholics Anonymous for a while. I didn't have any better plans. My first sponsor said, "Chris, I want you at a meeting every night until I tell you to stop." That was the one instruction he gave me in my first 6 months. And I did that. I went to a meeting every night for 8 years. I had no better plan. You know, there was my day timer was not filling up with a lot of good stuff. You know what I mean? I did not have any better plans. So I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous every single night. Now, there's wonderful promises and there's wonderful benefits to everything there is in Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's wonderful benefits and promises that have to do with the fellowship. And I got a lot of them. I started to make like real friends, you know, and I started to feel a part of. And when I started to do some of these service commitments, you know, I started to feel like this was my meeting. And, you know, I'd never been really wanted anywhere much before, you know, especially after the non-conference approved stuff ran out. I was not really the first person that you would invite anywhere. Now, I finally found a home. And, I went to meetings until I really, really loved going to meetings. And that got me back out in community. I got involved in community once more. I think as human beings, we're communal, we're tribal. That's in our DNA, that's in our nature. And what alcoholism does is alcoholism isolates you. And what it does is it shrinks your life. It makes your life smaller every single year. And what happened the year before I stopped drinking, I was living in a room in my mother's house. I had a terrible job. I had a $100 car. And, family members were not speaking to me. I had really no friends left. And my life just got smaller and smaller and smaller. So getting involved in AA, my life started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, some of the gifts of service. I don't know about anybody else, but I never did anything for anybody without expecting something back in return. Folks, selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our trouble. Alcoholism is toxic self-centeredness. That's what alcoholism is, and that's what drives the drinking, and that's what drives the behavior, the stuff that is wrong with us, how we're spiritually ill. And I started to do. I remember my first sponsor said, "Okay, here's what you're going to do." I love that. Here's what you're going to do. There's this cookout for the treatment center down the street, and I've volunteered. We're going to bring all the food and we're going to cook it at the fairgrounds, and you're going to help me cook. I'm like, oh, okay. And I remember going down there. I remember he put me behind the grill, actually grilling crab claws. So I'm sitting there like literally for like 4 hours. He's got me grilling crab claws. Everybody's like swimming and playing volleyball, and the smoke's in my eyes, and I smell like a fish. I'm like, Phil, can I quit now? And he's like, no. And then he said, you know what? You're gonna start driving the boobies from the hatch to the AA meetings, and you're gonna go over here and you're gonna go there. And he starts getting me invited. He was a service guy, right? And this came hard to me because I didn't say this to him. I could have said to him, Phil, I don't really see anything in this for me. But I knew better than to say anything like that. I knew I needed to just do what he said to do. Now, over the course of time, I remember this one time I was taking a meeting into a treatment center with Phil, and this guy pulled me aside after the meeting. He said, what you shared tonight really helped me. It was like the first time in like 90 years anybody ever said something like that to me. And I remember walking away, and I remember my self-esteem is starting to heal a little bit. You want self-esteem, do esteemable acts. And this service work started to heal another side of me. The biggest mistake I made in Alcoholics Anonymous was this. I believed that by studying the steps and believing the steps in theory, I believed that was a program. Now, so for about my first year and a half, I did literally no step work out of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. I did like a 7 deadly sin inventory, and I did like a life story. I did some of this bastardized inventory work. So I was doing some stuff, but I wasn't engaging in the recovery part of our triangle. And here's what would go on. I'm sober a year and a half in a meeting. And I'm sitting in one of the closed-minded discussion meetings in our area, and I'm sitting there, and I know how to give good meeting, so I'm like smiling and everything, and I'm looking around, and somebody gets done sharing, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, they're about to call on him. Oh my God, no, please don't call on that guy. Oh, please don't call on that guy. Whatever you do, they've called on him. Now I'm going to have to hear him share about his family for like 8 minutes. Why don't you just kill me now? Who cares? Oh, now he's grateful. Oh, how wonderful. I think what I'll do is I'll sneak out, I'll cut all 4 of his tires, and I'll follow him out of the meeting later just to see what gratitude really holds up, Oh God, thank God he's done. Oh, thank God he's done. Thanks for sharing. Now, that's just one little snapshot of what's going on in my head, right? Like I'm going to the meetings. I'm going to the meetings, and I'm doing this and helping lock the place up. And if somebody, I'm a meeting maker. I'm a fellowship dude. I'm a service guy, but I'm nuts. I'm nuts because I've skipped a part of our recovery process. Now, I had this friend. His name was Radio Shack Mike, and he was one of these guys. He was very, very pious. He would go to the New Age bookstores, and he'd buy the crystals and get the pyramids, and he'd get the affirmation tapes. This one time he gave me a set of these affirmation tapes. Here I am. I'm an untreated alcoholic, and I'm trying to do affirmations. Chris, you're a wonderful guy. Chris, you're a wonderful. I'm not a wonderful guy. I'm just like gave him back broken cassettes. So he was just, he had this spirituality that was based on whatever he read yesterday, right? And which was fine, but this one day he comes to me and he goes, "Hey, I got these from my roommate, and you're hardcore. you'll probably like these, and he hands me 8 90-minute cassette tapes. And I go, what are those? And he goes, oh, it's a big book workshop. These guys named Joe and Charlie do a big book workshop. I go, a big book workshop? He goes, yeah, they go through the big book. I go, they go through the big book, 8 90-minute tapes? I did the math. That's 12 hours. I go, where are these guys from? Arkansas. Arkansas? We get more thinking done by 9 o'clock than somebody from Arkansas is gonna. I'm from Jersey, but he made me promise. He made me promise to listen to him. So I take him. I got a ride to work. I got the cassette player, and I start listening to these big book tapes. Now, you got to understand, the big book was not popular. There's a renaissance going on, folks. There's a renaissance in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's areas that had that renaissance going on a long time ago. My area was not one of them. And the big book, the back to basics movement, the recovery movement, there's a renaissance going on. And it's not unlikely for there to be many experienced sponsors in any given group. But where I got sober, no one I ever knew went through the steps out of the big book. So all of a sudden I get this set of tapes. And I start listening to them. And I get pissed. Okay, I get really pissed because the message I got was this. You got to understand, everyone is patting me on the head. I mean, I'm going to a million meetings. I'm doing all these service commitments. People are patting me on the head. Chris, you're doing great. I see you everywhere. You're doing so good. You're doing so good. Right? And I start listening to these tapes, and they start talking about a program of recovery that's a different language to me. I've never heard this before. I read the big book while I was detoxing in rehab, and I read it like it was the Da Vinci Code. I read it like a day and a half, Oh, this is pretty archaic, and Bill's quite a loser. I'm done with this here. I never touched the big book. So I started listening, and he made me promise to go through all 8 tapes and not break them like I did the affirmation. So I did. I went through them, and I got really pissed because it basically said this. This was the message I got loud and clear. Chris, you're a fellowship maniac. But if you aren't taking these spiritual exercises and steps out of the book Alcoholics Anonymous, you do not have an AA program, because that's what an AA program is. So when you drink, please don't tell anyone that AA didn't work for you, because that's what AA is. It's a 12-step program. So now I'm really pissed about this information because I don't hear this in the closed-minded discussion meetings. I'm not even hearing it in the 12 and 12 meetings. I'm not hearing anything like this. I'm hearing stuff like, I'm in a 9th-step meeting, I'm hearing stuff like this. Well, I haven't done this step formally, but I'm going to take the meeting hostage for the next 10 minutes, giving you my opinion on what I think this step might be like if I ever decide to take it. That's what I'm hearing. So I take these tapes and I put them off to the side. Now I'm really pissed. That may be the way they do it in Arkansas, but I'm from Jersey, and in Jersey we share. I don't know about all this other homework. So there's a wonderful line in working with others. It says, if you've disturbed an alcoholic, if you've disturbed someone about their alcoholism, this is all to the good. And I understand that today, because what we try to do is we try to lovingly set up those disturbances in people. You got to do it with love. You don't just throw turd bombs. You have to, there has to be a little bit of method behind the madness, but you try to disturb people because the belief systems we have are so wrong. We come in here thinking so many things are wrong, and sometimes we have to shake these people up. I didn't even know what AA was, and I'd been going for a couple of years by the time I heard these tapes. Now, if you're anything like me, if you don't have a recovery program, but you're fellowshipping like a maniac, life is gonna happen. Life happens no matter what. I lost a girlfriend, I lost a job, and another state was sending me a lot of letters, something to do with fleeing to avoid prosecution, or I don't know, some detail like that, you know. And they were threatening to take my driver's license away. All this is hitting me at once, and I am in the barrel. There's another line in the big book that says that you're not going to be able to get through the trials and low spots ahead, basically, unless your spiritual house is in order. So, you know, I had no spiritual house that was in order, and I went in the barrel, and I became convinced that there was only a couple of ways to go. I could get drunk, I could kill myself, I could go crazy. And then I thought of those tapes. I thought of those Joe and Charlie tapes, and I remember pulling them back off the shelf. I remember dusting off my big book, okay? Hadn't even seen this big book since rehab. I open it up and it's got, I forgot all about this, but when you leave rehab, you get people to sign your big book, you know? And I open it up to the first one. It says, Chris, you're the craziest bastard I've ever met. You're never going to make it. Love, Harry. You know, so I brushed the dust off of this big book. I put the cassettes in. I got a pen. I got a pad, and I start to move through the steps with the guidance of these tapes. Not saying I did a great job, but what it was, I see now, was it was triage. It was spiritual triage. I did enough of the step work to start to heal my spirit. Folks, we have a spiritual illness, and we've got a book called Alcoholics Anonymous, which is really basically a spiritual textbook. This is a really unorthodox illness, and it's an unorthodox recovery process. You know, they call alcoholism a disease. The American Medical Association calls it a disease. I've experienced what it is, and I'm fine with calling it a disease, but I think it's much more than that. I think it's a soul sickness. I think it changes the way we think, the way we act. I think that there's enormous amounts of delusion involved and insanity. It's a monster. Alcoholism is a monster. And the really cool thing is a couple of people back in the 30s came up with not an answer to alcoholism, but a solution. When I first came into AA, I was looking for the answer. I don't look for the answer anymore. I'd rather have a solution is a little bit more important than an answer. You're going to get different answers no matter how many people you ask. But there's a solution. And the amazing thing to me is it treats all of the aspects of alcoholism, this recovery program. You know, 1939, the book Alcoholics Anonymous is published. The New York Times gets a hold of it and does a book review of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the worst book review they ever gave for anything. They absolutely trashed it. Folks, they didn't get it. They didn't get it. How many, 50 million copies, something like that, has been sold? I don't even know how many copies now. How influential has it been for people with addictive illness or obsessive compulsive disorders or whatever? Who knows? It's been unbelievably influential. But they talked about the real problem in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I thought my problem when I walked into AA was I drank too much. I really, if you would have asked me, Chris, what are you coming here for? Well, I'm coming here to not drink. You know, what's your biggest problem? Well, I drink like a maniac. It's out of control. That's basically what I would have said, and to a degree, that's very, very true. But there's deeper problems than the alcohol. alcoholism goes many, many levels below the alcohol. I was always of a nervous disposition. You know, Bill Wilson talks a lot about we're of a nervous disposition. From my earliest days, I remember I was very uncomfortable with myself, my environment, or crowds of people, or fluorescent lights, or long lines, or cops, or authority, or whatever. I'll see you later. I would leave. I had what today you might call, social anxiety or whatever. But what it was sobriety, just right here, right now, just wasn't good enough for me. And that's an aspect of alcoholism. I discover alcohol. I start drinking alcohol. All of a sudden, I'm larger than life. All of a sudden, everything fits into place. All of a sudden, I'm at the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right thing. It's the first time in my life I ever thought that. I heard a speaker one time say, I was backstage with the Beatles and couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. That's a beautiful example of that. Could there be a cooler place to be? But we gotta go. We gotta go. And I discover alcohol, and I discover the magic potion for me to be able to fit in. And I start drinking it. I start using it. I start planning it. I start experimenting with it. I start becoming a connoisseur of it. Until later on, I became a very, very good projectile vomiter of it. I think any real alcoholic understands projectile vomit. Folks, I am not kidding you. I would be at a party, and I'd be standing there talking to you like this, and I'd be saying, yeah, I don't know about those Mets. Excuse me a minute. I don't think they're going to make it to the pen. And the people I'm talking to would go like, oh, did you just vomit? Like, yeah. I swear. I'll tell one more vomit story, Robbie. Just one more. All right. You know how you're dehydrated in the morning, like if you drank like a quart of whiskey, or whatever, you just like, and you got to drink like a half a gallon or something. Well, I'm on my way to work, and I've got to hydrate back up, so I buy a gallon of grape drink, and drink this grape drink down. Now, I'm a bad electrician for a bad contractor doing bad work, and he sends us over to this house, and we're putting an electrical service on the house, right? And my partner usually does the panel down in the basement, and I usually do the stuff on the outside of the house, the meter and the drop and everything. And I'm out there, and he's messing around in the truck, and all of a sudden I start going. And if you're anything like me, you have 14.2 seconds. And there's not going to be much stopping this, right? So I don't want my partner to see me, getting sick. So I'm looking around and I go, I know, I'll run around the back of the house. So I just make it around the back of the house, and whoa! I like stucco the back of this house with purple vomit, just stucco, right? It's like a fire hydrant, right? And I thought I was alone. Well, this house backed up to another house, and there was a family. There was like a husband and a wife and 3 kids sipping iced tea on this back porch, like 15 feet away from. But like, whoa, And I'm like, well, God, I don't want to look stupid, So I get the hose and I'm washing. It's like gotta wash it off, or it'll stain. Oh God. Just really bad stuff. Anyway, I digress. How do you become the type of person where that's normal? How? If there isn't a huge level of insanity, a huge level of delusion, how does that become normalized? That you vomit in the middle of a sentence and you're surprised when someone reacts. How does that become normalized? alcoholism just is toxic. So I'm running around Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm half a lunatic, but I'm doing my job. At least, what my sponsor's telling me. I'm doing my job in AA, and I listen to these Joe and Charlie tapes, and I start going through the steps. Now, what happens to me is incrementally. It didn't happen like overnight, but I started to heal. And I started to get better, and I started to calm down. Like a calm Chris was unusual. People would ask me, like, you're doing pretty good, what's going on with you? And I almost didn't recognize the correlation between doing the steps and me getting better. I mean, I almost didn't pick that up. But I did. I started to heal. Some of the guilt, the shame, the remorse went away. I began to outgrow fear, that toxic resentment, that hating that bastard who shares in every meeting the same god-awful crap. Oh my God. I started to have no problem with that dude, and I started to heal. And up around that period of time, a lot of people were asking me to sponsor them, and I was saying yes. It's almost like every psychotic lunatic known to man was asking me to sponsor them. Oh my God! And some of them were drinking on me and making me look bad. You know what I mean? You ever have them drink on you and you look bad? People come up to you, Robbie, is Harry yours? Do you know he's drinking and he's hitting on the new women and he's borrowing people's cars? Yeah, Harry's mine. All right, I'll have a talk with him. So what I decided to do is I decided to do this mini little big book workshop at my house. This is like 1993 or something, right? And I start bringing all my sponsees over to the house, and we start going through the big book, sentence by sentence. And when there's an instruction, we stop and we do that instruction before we move on. It would take months, to get these guys through. Now, I absolutely have to share this with you because it's become so important to me. It's one of those black and white truths that is it's undeniable from my own experience working with others. The guys who went through the big book and did all of the steps, they paid the money back. They did the fifth step. They developed a discipline of prayer and meditation. They started taking other people through the steps and actively sponsoring and doing service commitments and stayed consistent with that. Every single one of those guys are still around. There's a million of them in our life. These guys have been in my life 20 plus years now. Really good friends. The people who would find the step process an overreaction to a problem that they really might actually have under control themselves, none of them are around. I don't know if they're drinking. I just know that they're not around. They're not in AA anymore, at least in my area. So it's almost black and white to me. I believe that to be able to stay in Alcoholics Anonymous, to be able to stay here, week after month after year after decade, you have to put enough into Alcoholics Anonymous to get enough of that access to the power and grace of God to be able to stay. I just believe that. If you're in real trouble with alcoholism, you need to really do your job with this. One of the greatest things has been working with guys. Again, there was a number of real knuckleheads that I worked with early on, but you can never pick the horse at the gate. Like the people I thought were going to get sober and be great, the people I'm like, oh my God, I got to work with this guy. Those are usually the people that stayed sober. I had this one guy. He came out of the city, and he was a rough dude. And remember, I got sober in the doctor, lawyer, money manager meetings, right? And he shows up in our town. He was from some pretty horrific background. And he made some money doing this, that, and the other thing, and he ended up moving to our town. But this dude was rough. On a regular basis, if somebody didn't share something he liked, he would go across the room, he'd grab him by the neck, lift him up, start beating the hell out of him, and throw him out of the room. Now, I don't know if there's a tradition against this, Robbie, maybe in the service manual, but people had a problem with this, and they would now listen. This is a guy who was doing his amends. He was praying and meditating. He was going to meetings. He was doing his job in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started to pay attention to this, and I would go back to the people that this wasn't what they were looking for, but I said, God, it's been weeks since he's done that. He's getting so much better. Like he used to do that like once a week. It's like every 2 or 3 months now. And some people need a meeting, some people need a beating. What can I tell you? What can I tell you? So that wasn't exactly what they were looking for, but we claim progress rather than spiritual spiritual perfection. We claim progress. He was a wonderful guy. There's a couple of other people that stick out in my mind that really went around and helped a lot of other people. Some of the great promises in Alcoholics Anonymous are those 12-step promises. You'll create the fellowship you crave. You'll experience a host of friends. Frequent contact with newcomers will be the bright spot in your lives. All these things. Now, if you're new or just coming back, frequent contact with newcomers is probably not going to be the high spot in your life. I understand, but to some of us, it is. It is. We get to see the different stages in alcoholism and the different stages in recovery. Really liked what Robbie was talking about God. I don't think we talk enough about God in Alcoholics Anonymous. I think one of the sayings that was going around the groups in my area was, especially in the beginners meetings, don't bring up God. You don't want to chase the newcomer away. You would hear that, right? God is the ultimate solution. Our relationship with and the power that will work in us and through us from God is our ultimate solution. Why would we not want to tell you that? Now, there's ways to communicate. There's ways to communicate the divinity of this program that are sometimes better than others. Nobody likes an evangelist, but I think we need to understand that lack of power is our dilemma, and the solution to power is a power greater than ourselves. That's the solution to our problem. And the great news here is there's not theology in our book. There's spirituality in our book. They understood that if they put too much theology in the book, they would cut the room in half. And we don't want to cut any room in half. We don't want to cut anybody out of this. So the terms are spiritual, and the book was passed around to a lot of different people, and they gave some suggestions, and some of those suggestions were followed. I was talking to somebody last night at a meeting, and I explained to them, I go, it's so difficult to talk about the spiritual experiences that we have personally in Alcoholics Anonymous using language. It's difficult. It's so difficult. How do you do it sometimes? But basically what I can say is this. Coming into AA, best thing I ever did in my life. Service commitments changed the whole way I thought about the world. The recovery process was the true spiritual healing. And I believe this. I believe that if you actually take these steps and embed this spiritual living into your behavioral systems, what will happen is you will make a clear and direct channel for a power greater than yourself to come in and do for you what you can't do for yourself. Now, what does that mean? What does that look like? To each of us, that's going to be personal. That's going to be personal. But the really good news is, rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. So it's a matter of taking the spiritual exercises, the right attitude, the right actions. And there is a solution for alcoholism. Another mistake I made, a huge mistake I made early on was, if it wasn't directly related to alcohol, I didn't believe it was alcoholism. And I didn't think AA was about helping there. I understand today that that the spiritual process and the steps will help everything. I mean, it doesn't solve everything, but it helps everything in my life. It helped me to become more dependable and more employable and more promotable. It helped me to have better and longer lasting relationships because I wasn't always trying to figure out how this is going to work for me. You know, it enabled me to not make huge mistakes in my life that I would spend countless hours trying to fix. So that spiritual life isn't a theory. You know, when we start to live it, really, really good things start to happen. When Bill Wilson talks about God in the Big Book, there's enormous latitude in the concepts. Bill was inspired by some of the New Thought people, some of the Christian Scientists and stuff like that. He was the Emmett Foxes and the people like that. He was very inspired by them, and they were, you know, very progressive for the 30s. But he was very open-minded spiritually, and when he talks about God in the book, he uses some wonderful language. The great reality, the Father of light, power greater than ourselves. You know, you keep looking at these different descriptives that he uses, and they talk more about power than they talk about a specific religious deity. They talk about power. I think it's much more important when you're thinking about God, rather than thinking in the belief systems that you came in here with, you know, the Sunday school or the religious belief systems. You know, listen, the spiritual life is broad, roomy, and all-inclusive, and go for any of that makes you feel comfortable. But we need power. We need power. Without power, we are not going to make it. And we need the power to be able to have our life recreated. We need the power to be able to outgrow fear. We need the power, basically, to do anything in our lives. We just do. Some of the most amazing experiences I've had taking people through the steps was watching atheists turn into believers. There's this wonderful guy. He's probably my favorite sponsee ever. He was flat atheist. He was like, you know, this is all crap. I did my college dissertation on, you know, why God doesn't exist. You know, and okay, let's put that aside for the moment and let's do all of your amends. Okay. Let me tell you that the awakening this person has had has been unbelievable. He's got an unbelievable connection to God. And it's not because he read the right books, or it's not because he went to the right churches. It was because he lived the right life. It's because he put this into his life. He had that transformational experience. You know, I'm going to tell one story, and then I'm going to sit down. For some crazy reason, I was a bad electrician. You know, I'd be blowing people up. I mean, let me tell you this. I can tell you what you don't want to do. You don't want to electrocute plumbers. Okay. There's just something about them. They don't find it funny. And you know, and I would be electrocuting people. I was a bad electrician. I get sober now, folks. I had my priorities right. I just wanted to stay away from alcohol. I just wanted to do the AA thing. I couldn't have cared less about my job. But what happened was, you know, the spiritual life makes you more employable. You stop lying. You start showing up on time. You know, just the simplest things. And what happened was I kept getting better jobs and better jobs and better jobs over the last, 20, 30 years. Today, one of my jobs is I'm a senior facility manager for pharmaceutical research and development site. And I've run 2 pharmaceutical manufacturing sites. Now, I still think that if they find out about me, they're going to recognize their mistake. You know, I still kind of feel that way. But let me tell you a story about something that happened in this manufacturing plant. Now, in pharmaceutical manufacturing, the processes, folks, are unbelievably precise. The amount of rigor that goes into validating and inspecting and maintenance and signing double, triple, quadruple for every single step in the manufacturing process is unbelievable, because these are life-saving medications. You screw up and drop your sandwich in the batch or something, people could die. So it's unbelievably intense. There's groups of quality assurance officials. There's inspectors. There's FDA. There's all these people that come in and do audits. Now this one day, what happened was there was a hopper, and giant hopper. All the tablets are in this giant hopper, and they pop down and they go into the pill bottles. The pill bottles get capped on the assembly line, and they move on. Well, what happened one day was the top of the hopper flew off and hit the ground and broke. So they're like, oh crap, top of the hopper broke, let's get another one as fast as we can. Well, they find out that the lead time, because this is manufactured in Europe or something, the lead time is like 8 weeks to get this top for the hopper. Well, they're not willing to stop production for 8 weeks. So Harry, the maintenance guy, builds a top for the hopper. He gets some plexiglass and some crazy glue, and he makes a top for the hopper and puts it on there, right? Well, a couple of days later, the QA people are going through, and they got their checklist, and they look up and they go, the top of that hopper looks different than the top of that hopper. Everything stops. The whole plant stops. Investigations start. People start coming out of the woodwork and they're asking questions. They finally get to the bottom of it that Harry made the top. Well, now they have to do an investigation, and they literally, all the medication is on hold all around the country, and they've got to do an investigation to make sure that top that Harry made could not have impacted the quality of the pharmaceutical product before they could release the medication, right? So all this is going on. Now, why do I tell this story? Folks, we have a life-saving process in here. We have a life-saving process in here. It's right up on the wall. But we don't have quality assurance officers walking around saying, "What did your sponsor just tell you?" We don't have checklists that show as you go through every step, you get it double and triple signed by somebody. This is an open organization. This is for fun and for free, and we hope to get you enthusiastic enough to actually do this. We don't have that oversight that the pharmaceutical, but we have a life-saving process. The one thing we do have, though, is we have a standard operating procedure. It's called the book Alcoholics Anonymous. If you've struggled with drinking, if you've struggled with alcoholism, if your life is not where you really think it could be or you want it to be, what I would do is I would recommend that you get an experienced sponsor. Any of the people that raised their hands earlier, get an experienced sponsor and go through that book fearlessly, thoroughly. Go through that book. Your life will never, ever be the same. This is the best deal I've ever been offered. Alcoholics Anonymous is the best deal I've ever had in my life. Anyway, that's all I got. Thank you.
Folks, on top of that wonderful, wonderful speech, I do want to promise you there are 3 fresh pots of coffee back there. And there's another one brewing, so we'll have a 4th at the end here. Let's take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll have our last speaker. And please, 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 we save the best for last.
Stop it. You're turning me on.
She's
Kiddos, if you don't mind, grab yourself your coffee, some desserts if you'd like. Give you like a 2 or 3 minute warning here, then we'll grab our seats and invite our last speaker up. And another couple hours before the carriage turns back into a pumpkin and all that kind of stuff. So we'll be good to go here.
Like that, no, this is like, I want to be little Mickey Sparkle. Is that good? You got a different one. Choose your one. Good, that's good.
All right, give me a second here. Oh, I think I forgot to turn the recorders off.